Just to add to what Aaron said, um, I'll do my declaration of interest now because it's easier for everybody. I'm also a Shropshire County Councillor. I've got the planning portfolio, but that's a strategic role, and it has no role whatsoever in terms of determining any planning applications. Just as a point of interest, I've worked for a planning consultant for 17 years, and I've worked in surveying for quite a long time, and been a member for quite a long time. But we'll go into the declarations of interest in a minute for everybody. But we've got the public participation session first item on the agenda. What I would say is if you want to speak to the meeting, if you could just raise your hands, just so I've got an idea of who wants to speak or not, and then I can. Because if everybody wanted to speak, then I'd have to potentially throttle the amount of time that you'd have to be available to speak. Thank you. As Aaron said, it's a public meeting, not or a meeting in public, not a public meeting. So once the meeting starts proper, then you won't have an opportunity to speak. So if you want to speak, then do it in the public participation session, but it's not a Q&A. So I'll invite, if you put your hands up again, and then I'll go from left to right, the lady in the blue and white dress.
I want to speak on the Mount Drive housing, not the HMO.
Well, there's not that many people who want to speak, so I'm happy to take all the questions now.
Fine.
I was, if there was going to be a lot, I would have done possibly the HMO first, so then they can go off.
That's what I was expecting.
But there's not an awful lot of indicated, so we'll just do it all in one block. If that's
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll keep it short. My name's Maggie Hill. I live on Mount Drive, just off Mount Road. Been there for 20 years with my husband and family. I think we must, in trying to keep it short, I think we have to remember that this is an outline application, and all matters are reserved except for the means of access onto Mount Road, and presumably the red line boundary. So everything else, that is layout, landscaping, scale, appearance, are all reserved matters. They're relevant, but they're not the major issue here. And it seems to me that if it was to be given consent as an outline application, we would be consenting very much an unknown application, apart from this, where is the access going to be? This means that planners must decide on this application on fundamental characteristics of the site, whether it's suitable or unsuitable. And in my view, it is unsuitable for three main reasons. Firstly, its location. All strategic planning in Oswestry over the last 20 or so years has put big housing sites and big employment sites towards the bypass, for obvious reasons, really. So this being on what you might call the wrong side of town, inevitably means that major traffic issues will occur both on Mount Road and also around town itself, particularly on the one-way system. I live in Mount Drive, as I said, and easing gradually out into Mount Road in the mornings is always a nightmare, so it would not make it any easier. The other second main fundamental issue about this site is that it is very difficult to connect it to the rest of the town. It has the waterworks along one side, and it has all the houses at the top of the Lamporter housing estate, all on little cul-de-sacs along the eastern side. This means that there's only one road access, which is on the short frontage to Mount Drive, and the only other access is via Muddy Lane, which is the bridle way. This cannot possibly, as the applicant suggests, be a major thoroughfare. I mean, it's hard enough to get through it at all, even if they did improvements. And I think if they did improvements, it would have other issues in terms of flooding and so on. So I think, how are people going to get out of this site? It's about 1 kilometre north to south, and so if you lived at the last house, you would have to drive probably 1 kilometre to Mount Road or struggle down a muddy lane, which is very steep. So I think that's an issue, and it is a big issue in terms of the sustainability and connectivity of the site. And thirdly, this is my third main point, the site has an important role in absorbing and dispersing heavy flows that come down off the hills, and particularly in high rainfall events. It takes and it absorbs flows as a sort of soakaway, and then diverts those flows both down Mount Road and down Muddy Lane. I've stood up there at the top during high flows, and you get a surface flow over the fields. So we know that the centre of town floods in flooding the high rainfall events, and this clearly, it's very difficult to see how it wouldn't make it worse, and the applicants certainly haven't demonstrated that. So anyway, so after all that, my opinion is that these issues means this proposal is fundamentally not suitable due to its location at these three particular elements, and therefore it cannot comply with the National Planning Policy Framework, and which of course is the critical issue. I noticed there was 87 objections on the site this afternoon.
Thank you. I believe the gentleman on your left also indicated, or is it, have I? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Matthew John, I live on Highbar Avenue, so I'm directly next to this site. So I believe there's several reasons to oppose this application. It's outside Oswald Street's development boundary. There are concerns around road safety, and we've just heard that. In actual fact, I want to add one to that as well. Hayes Barn, which is on one of the access routes, which this has been proposed, actually was refused on that basis, that it wasn't safe. There's flooding issues, there's wildlife issues, the veteran trees to be taken into consideration. There's also the bridleway and local services, and we've already heard about the bridleway there. So Shropshire Council's figures show Woodside Primary has 549 pupils for 504 places. The Marcher School has 1,389 pupils for 1,350 places. So clearly they are already overpopulated. The scheme could add, according to Shropshire Council's application, about 95 primary and 50 secondary schools with over 4 million needed for education. That's according to their figures. Official NHS figures show around 36,779 patients across Oswestry's 3 town practices, supported by 14.32 permanent qualified GP full-time equivalents. So that's about a ratio of 2,568 patients per GP. The NHS recommendations are that no more than 2,000 per GP. So again, oversubscribed. Because my time is limited, I'm going to focus on the Grade 2 listed building, the Hayes. The reason I'm doing this is because planning rules require great weight to be given to protecting it and its setting. The developer's own report now, says this. It says part of the Hayes recorded garden reaches into the proposed site. It says the Hayes and the whole site were once under the same ownership and occupation. It says the land forms much of its wider setting. Now ultimately what they are admitting here is that that site is that they are planning to develop is part of the Hayes site, which is a Grade 2 star listed location and should be preserved. The plan proposes to create an entrance on the northern line for 335 home estates with a road, paths, lighting, planting and play parks. That is not the same as a rural setting. Now, the developer goes on to say, well, the developer goes on to admit that it causes harm. So that's not disputed. It's also not disputed that it's part of the same site. What they're saying, though, is that harm is at its lower levels. Now, that is disputable. Let me ask you this. If we built a large housing estate in Chirk Castle grounds, with the entrance to that housing estate running right past Chirk Castle, would you say that is only a small change? Ridiculous, of course not. So clearly the haze isn't Chirk Castle, but the principle is the same. Do not rely on the developer's assessment. Their conclusion needs independent check-in, and that's what I'm asking for, independent check-in. I asked the Town Council to object, seek assessment by the Council's Conservation and Archaeology officers and Historic England for a formal review, arrange a site visit and require a decision by the Northern Planning Committee, not under delegated powers. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple more just in here that I can remember, and then I'll have to get you to put your hands up again. Yeah, if you want to come up. If I take the chap in the striped shirt first, and I'll come to you at the front.
Would you like to see it?
I'll stand up, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor, thank you all. Just to echo flood risks, Transport Ridge, I am the owner of the Hayes, and I want to just stress that this development goes through our property. We are not associated with it at all and object to it. The Hayes is a Grade 2-star listed property. The curtilage where this proposed development falls is definitely unlawful. Section 66 of the Planning, Listed Buildings and Conservation Act 1990 precludes building in this area. It seems to have been not referenced at all in the heritage aspects of the report. My point is that it's unlawful. There's been a very flippant dismissal of the heritage aspects, echoing the previous sentiments. This runs through our drive. We're not associated, we're not part of it, we're not agreeable to it. I know others will speak on the flooding, which we see in the streets adjacent, so I'll limit my points to the heritage points, but fundamentally object to it and believe. As previously stated, we need to get Heritage England involved, we need to get the Midlands Assessor, we need any support that the council can align from those historical committees and heritage interested parties. There's no point in having laws if they're flouted, so that's my main objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight we're not being asked simply whether Oswestry needs more housing. You've been asked whether this council should support the principle and scale of up to 335 houses before some of the most important questions have been answered. This would be the planning equivalent of signing a blank cheque and trusting someone else to fill in the figures later. The site lies outside the Oswestry development boundary and is classified as countryside. The applicant accepts conflict with several adopted planning policies, relies heavily upon housing land supply arguments to overcome that conflict. But even where housing needs is accepted, need does not excuse unresolved infrastructure, uncertain drainage, or incomplete environmental evidence. The foul drainage proposal depends upon a pumping station and connection to an existing Severn Trent combined sewer. Yet the applicant's own flood risk assessment says hydraulic modelling to establish whether network upgrades are required will be undertaken after planning consent. In plain English, councillors are being asked to approve up to 335 homes before it has been established whether the receiving sewer can accommodate them. We already know what happens when fundamental drainage questions are deferred. Plans change, responsibilities become blurred, regulators are drawn in, and residents are left trying to reconstruct decisions that should have been settled before approval. This is not speculation, it's a lesson local government should by now have learned. Surface water drainage is no more reassuring. The ground is predominantly clay and unsuitable for infiltration. The scheme therefore depends upon extensive attenuation areas, ditches, culverts and controlled outfalls, while parts of the final design, adoption and long-term maintenance remain for the later agreement. Then there is the United Utilities Treatment Works immediately beside the southern boundary. The noise report refers to an unknown standoff, distance, possible acoustic barriers, and circumstances in which future residents may need to keep windows closed at night. That is not a resolved relationship. It is an admission that housing, gardens, drainage, trees, landscaping, and industrial mitigation have yet to be made to fit together. The applicant also acknowledges harm to the setting of the Grade 2 listed building, the Hayes, while relying upon an illustrative layout. Future landscaping to reduce that harm. Yet layout, scale and landscaping are reserved matters. There are 14 veteran trees, possible incursions into their root protection areas. Ecological inconsistencies, reported vehicle speeds of up to 54 miles per hour, and an infrastructure contributions that remain unquantified. This council should therefore object, not because Ossory needs no housing, but because approval should follow evidence, not precede it. Once outline plan permission is granted, every unanswered question becomes a later negotiation. Every safeguard becomes a condition, and every failure becomes someone else's problem. Planning should prevent those problems. It should not approve them in advance. Thank you.
Just moving around to my right, who was next? Who got the hand up in that? Yeah, go on.
There is a microphone just
Hello, my name's Stephen Hazelwood. I live on Brynavod Road. When it rains really hard, the water comes down Muddy Lane like a torrent. It washes past my bungalow and into the houses further down Brynavod Lane. Last time it flooded, it can't hit my house because it's just high enough off the ground, the road, to stop it. But it forced the sewage back in the sewage pipes into my back garden. All this is runoff from the fields where they're planning to build. And I see there's also plans to pave some of Muddy Lane. Well, surely this will increase the flood risk. And also, the cars will, you've got, what is it, 350 houses? That means 700 cars. They will be using Hampton Road, Brynavod Road, to cut through to Welsh Wharves. But the main thing I'm objecting to is the flood risk and the extra flooding. The houses further down from me are very close to the level of the road, and they have to put sandbags out when it gets really bad. That's my objection.
Thank you. Did you want to speak? Yes, sorry.
I think the Weiss proposal should be refused by maintaining the planning basis agreed by the old Borough Council that the building boundary for the west of Oswestry should be at the defensible town boundary. This line was once, if it's once breached, has no other defensible line until you get up to the racecourse, and it would therefore be very difficult indeed, if you accept this proposal, to refuse any future proposal going up that hill. Shropshire Council's website says that the land is very wet. That's for everyone to see. It's on there. Those of, oh, I didn't give you my name. I'm so sorry. I'm Irene Gull, and I lived in Hampton Road and now live in Mount Crescent. I forget. I think everyone knows me because I'm so old. Where was I? Those of us who have lived many years here and have seen summer storms cause flooding from that steep hill time and time again. And yet the proposal is that Muddy Lane, which is just a stream bed and has always been just a stream bed, will be macadammed and become the preferred walking route into town. Well, not only is it a long walk, and I've done it many times, but it is also impossible if it rained, because the water comes down it and it reverts to being a stream again. There is no mention that last summer, the bottom of Hampton Road, the whole of Bryn Havard Road and Welsh Walls was really deep in water through a flash flood that came down Muddy Lane. The gentleman there spoke of it. The cottages in Bryn Havard Road have about 2 inches. And over my lifetime in Oswestry, I have seen those cottages flooded so often. As they say, they have sandbags. But we mustn't do anything to exacerbate the situation for those people. It would be cruel. The developer acknowledges that there's good land bank available near the retail park. So why build where there are no shops, no schools, and no medical services? And it will need pumped foul sewage to take it up the hill in the hope it's going to get into Mount Road main sewer. A big hill and a big pump when there's no power cut. It seems to me that they see pound signs and not real people in this proposal. It will blight so many people's lives, not least those living in Castle Street, Welsh Walls, the very worst alternative, turn down Oak Street and York Road and try and cut through to Beatrice Street that way, who will have to live with the large volume of extra traffic generated through putting that big estate so far from jobs and amenities. It is a ludicrous proposal. Thank you.
Right, I'll carry on with that corner. The lady in red t-shirt.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Wilding. I live on Hampton Fields, which is right at the bottom of the hill below the proposed development. I think everyone's spoken really well. I just want to put one additional idea in here, because I think we're all worried about the flooding and the traffic. But also, I'd like to speak up for nature, because Oswestry, according to the Shropshire Council website, has 27 acres of green public space, which is just 3% of the total area in Oswestry, in the whole town. This is the very bottom in the country, 3%. City of London has 3%. People have said to me, it doesn't matter, you can get out into the countryside. Well, we can't get out into the countryside if we continue to build out and out without making any reference to nature. Muddy Lane, I know, is a vital nature corridor into the town. And the thought of paving it over is just awful to me. I love going up Muddy Lane. I come back with wet feet. But you know, I couldn't go to work down it. That would be ridiculous. The other thing about the site is that it's on a B highway, a national B highway, which runs between Oswestry to the west up to the racecourse. And this is a vital nature corridor joining up insect habitats, putting the site in there when we have experienced insect population declines to catastrophic levels in the last few years, just cannot, it would be madness when we are living in a climate emergency to just make things worse in that way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in that corner towards the back? Les, do you want to go first, then we'll have Martin.
Hi, thank you. My name's Les Maguire. I think most of you know me and where I live, and this does affect me. That's why I'm here. I'm not here just for the sake of the residents. I use the road in which we're all talking about that floods. It flooded just last year, and I've never seen it so bad as it was last year. It floods mainly as well because all the drains get blocked up because they can't cope with what's already in existence. To add extra houses up the top there, the 350 houses, or thereabouts, is just going to make the problem even worse. But I have written a little thing out here, and I'll read it out to you. Here today to strongly object to the 350 houses on the Mount. My objection to this development is current from because it's not sustainable. The proposal conflicts with key principles of national planning policy framework. It raises serious concerns over flooding, which we've all spoken about in this room. Serious concerns over the flooding, highway safety, healthcare provisions, school, which we've all spoken about, well, one or two of you have spoken about today, capacities, sewage infrastructure and protection to our natural environment, which this lady here has spoken about now. So everyone in this room is on the same page. Perhaps most concerning is the apparent absence of the full environmental impact assessment, which is key. For the development of this scale, residents deserve a transparent assessment of the impact on flooding, biodiversity, air quality, infrastructure, public health before any decision is made. Flooding already, as I was saying before, a known issue in the area, adding hundreds of homes to a large area of hard standing services will inevitably increase surface runoff water and place additional pressure on already stretched drainage systems. Our drainage systems in Oswestry are old. There are some new parts that have been put in the last few years, but the majority of it is old. Our roads, particularly Willow Street, are not designed to cope with a significant increase in traffic. This development would create congestion, rat runs through, as we've already spoken about, through Lamborder Rise, Hampton Road and Brenaford Road, and probably down the very road I live. Children are it's also a concern for children because that road, Hayes Barn itself, where they want to put that exit, there is not a wide enough pathway to put area to put a path. The wall is owned by Hayes Barn, or the houses of the two properties at Hayes Barn, so they cannot knock that down to do so without your permission, I should think. I don't know. So what I'm saying is, there is no way to put a path for children or public to actually walk down from the Mount down into Oswestry if they was to use the foot, go by foot. Finally, our sewage network, I've already said, our sewage network is already struggling due to periods of heavy rainfall without major investment and development, risks will only get worse. For all these reasons, I would urge the Council to oppose the application in its current form and insist that no decision is made until a full environmental impact assessment has been completed and robustly done, and a fully funded infrastructure solution are in place. Yeah, that's me all done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to speak very briefly about the Mount. My name's Martin Jones, of Ulster Rural Parish Council, but also about the application for the HMO. So would you like me to wait, or?
You can do it all now if you
Okay.
like.
So just touching on the Mount, to all of you, I extend you a welcome to our meeting as consultees, Ulster Rural Parish Council. We'll get to vote on this, and you are welcome to attend to Rudicrusoe Village Hall on the Thursday, the 30th of July. Open invitation. If you wish to attend and send in objections, you're welcome to attend. 7 p.m. Thank you very much. Rudicrusoe Village Hall. Thursday the 30th. It's fine, as councillors, we're given it a, yes. The council has, there is a report that we've put in with regard to this that I've put on the table for councillors to look at so as not to take up much of your time. One thing that you may not be aware of is that all the road drains go to rivers. They don't go to the sewage treatment plant. So all the additional pollution from cars, etc., go into the rivers. Okay? We're already fighting to try and clean the Mauder Brook up. It's not a river, and we're struggling. So just bear that one in mind. If I can divert your attention to the HMO, my nan moved to 42 Laburnum Drive in the 60s and remained there until the 90s. My granddad died there in 1970 and my great-gran in 1978. Spent many of my formative years there. Although I'm originally from St Martin's, my parents both worked. And I remember it with great fondness because it was a safe family estate. And I can name many families and neighbours of my nan, that some of whom still remain there. The Ryans, the Dykes, the Pierpoints, the Haywoods, the Edwards. I can go on and mention many more. The point is, it hasn't changed from those days greatly. Most of the privet hedges remain. There's still front gardens. They're not all driveways. Front and rear gardens. Most of the new houses going up don't have both. And whilst it's a mixture of social and private ownership, it still feels the same. Even though I haven't been there for many a decade, and I just go round on the bike, it still feels the same. There's less to do there, and things feel a little bit further away. The Woodlands has gone, some of you may recall, and it's now houses. The leisure centre has moved further away. The shop remains, but the car park is busier, and like all of these estates, parking of cars at night can be a bit of an issue. The primary schools remain. Fortunately, planners back then considered those things. And that is the point. It was and will be a place to raise families. Not densely packed rooms with no space or facilities for single people, with nowhere to park and limited options for work. The word professionals is bandied around, young or otherwise, and it's from another age. It's from the 90s. And it's for cities, predominantly London, Manchester. But what does professionals mean? Professionals, they want a car. They don't want to walk to work or on a push bike. The church extended in the 1980s to the size it is. How? It didn't have space then, or the grounds to extend. So what did it do? It bought land off the council from Ian Haywood's garden. That's how it extended. It hasn't grown any bigger. It's got no more space than it did. It didn't have a cemetery. It still doesn't. It just had a congregation, which has now moved. So it just needed pews for people to sit on. The new owner can't give any more outside space because it can't purchase anymore, and it doesn't exist. It simply isn't suitable for a HMO. 4 apartments, yes, maybe. But this is too much intensification of one plot and of the site. It will just become a hostel for people to wander back to after drifting around town of an evening. It won't help community, and if it were to become of a home of undocumented men or a couple of families, it may well lead to social unrest and the language that we've seen used on other sites. The area and the site cannot deal with this level of over-intensification, and it has not been demonstrated the need for this amount of HMO rooms, not even for the ones in the town centre, which remain a source of heated debate. Thank you very much for listening, and apologies for taking up your time.
Thank you. Martin.
No, no. Please, please don't feed me a line like that. Mr. Chairman, I commend to the Council the comments that have been made by members of the public. I've known councillors on planning committees who could not argue the facts as cogently as they have. And for those who don't know me, Martin Bennett, resident of Oswestry since the year dot, resident in Oak Drive, actually, and a former councillor and indeed former chair of the Oswestry Rural Parish Council as well. Outline planning applications are very difficult to deal with because they're speculative and the devil is in the detail. But once it's been approved, you then find that the detail is actually a lot more important than you thought it was going to be. And the one element that perhaps hasn't been mentioned tonight amongst all the others is the effect of cumulative development on Oswestry. Certainly the influence on the road network is important because if these 700 car movements a day, or even some of them, are going to go down Castle Street, they're going to pass a preschool which does not have traffic calming measures in front of it. And basically I'd say that the town's infrastructure in roads is pretty poor. We know that traffic can back up along Plough Bank. We have talked about the drainage. I seem to remember a long time ago some of the infrastructure being upgraded, but the question I can't remember is, what was it upgraded to? What was the maximum capacity estimated at the time, and where are the gaps? And that's particularly important because every time I pass that 600-odd estate that's being built near me, I keep thinking to myself, they've put all these new sewers in, but what are they connecting to? And what is the capacity when that estate of 600, or will it be 700 or 800 houses, is finally completed? And there is one element that has not been mentioned. Yes, we've heard about the surface water, but what about potable water? My calculation, on average, those houses, if they were built, would take 180,000 litres of fresh water every day. That's in addition to the 1.5 million litres a day, which would be taken by 600 houses on the new estate by me. Now, we all know that we get a lot of rain in Oswestry, and we've all been talking tonight about where it's actually going to go. And there's nothing in here actually about harvesting water systems, or even passive cooling of buildings. So where is all this extra water going to come from? Bearing in mind that probably everyone in this room has been urged by Severn Trent to save water. We're sort of back to 1976. Put a brick into your toilet system and have a bath with a friend. Or have a bath with a couple of friends if they're really friendly. I'm sorry, Irene, I'm washing my hair that night. Historically, Mr. Chairman, the Town Council, many, 100, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, built a reservoir, Penegwelly. Interestingly enough, the year after, there was a drought, and a local wordsmith crafted the following. The mayor of the town of Oswestry had to go down on his knees and then on his belly for to see the famous waters of the Penegwelly. But the point I'm trying to make is a very serious one. It will generate further demand which Severn Trent now cannot supply. So unless the infrastructure is going to be there, we're either going to stop, find reasons to stop building, or the future is not going to be a good one. And as the professor from Back to the Future said, the future is what you make it. Make it a good one.
Thank you. I'm almost around the room. Is there anybody in this corner that wanted to speak, or is that everybody now? Oh, sorry. I apologise because you've been behind, James. Sorry. Do you want to go first, and then I'll take the...
I can't match the eloquence of the previous speakers, but I just thought I'd just round something off.
Do you want to come
Can you
to...
not hear me? Sorry. I'm not going to be there.
It's in front of you.
It's in front of me, thank you. I live in Havant Close, and I can look up the hill, and all the descriptors we've had today on the water runoff is real. About 2 months ago, 2 hapless individuals came into the field, and they were trying to walk up, and they had ground-penetrating radar. And it was very good, because they kept falling over. And we were quite interested to watch how many times, and they found it quite exhausting. But I'd just lay that as an aside. The one thing I would like the council to think about, and maybe address, in all this is the position of the impact might be on the fire station, and the huge amount of traffic now, which is running into town, into bottlenecks, as people have already described. Whether you go down to Willow Street, a bottleneck, you go into Oak Street, a bottleneck, you turn left and go down York Street, a bottleneck, and it just goes on. So that surely must impact the ability of our first responders to get out into town, onto the A5 and whatever they do. So I just bring that up as just another thing that I think the council needs to represent and get a thorough risk assessment completed.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name's Stuart McNeil. I live on Hayes View, one of the cul-de-sacs that is immediately below the development site. My previous speaker actually introduces this nicely. I just wanted to put some context to some of the things that are going on here. So 335 new households means, using the government's typical number of daily journeys per household, which is 5.5, just under 2,000 additional vehicle movements up and down Mount Road every day. That's assuming that only less than 60% of journeys are done by car. Now, it looks like the 2 proposed pedestrian routes are on pretty dubious ground here, in that they don't actually own the right to go across one of them, the Hayes one, and the other one is Muddy Lane, which is muddy. That means that it's probably going to be more like 3,000 vehicle movements a day up and down Mount Road, which is huge. And also coming down, they have priority over all the other roads that come in from the side that are already congested. So it's going to be a major issue for the town. Shropshire Council was consulted as to whether this needed an EIA, and one of many things in that summary document that determined that they didn't need an EIA was that only minor regrading of the slope, the hillside, would be required in order to create flat areas to put the dwellings on. Now, subsequently, they've done the flood risk assessment and determined that they need 5,000 cubic metres of water basins. That's at least, and this is assuming the lightest typical soil load, 5,500 tonnes of earth that they've got to move. That, to put it into context, assuming they truck it off-site, is another 550 lorry loads coming down Mount Road during the construction period. And that's before you even think about any excavations for the roads, the houses, any development that needs to go in, bricks. There's quite a lot of bricks in 335 homes. There are also a number of different protected species that are either resident on the site or have it as part of their home range. So that includes badgers, bats, red kites and buzzards. they have only done partial analysis of this. There's a Badger report that's been pulled, I understand, because the section wasn't redacted. There isn't, as far as I can see, a bat report. There isn't any protected species general reports on there. Yeah, sorry, breeding birds, which the council actually said in their pre-app notice that they needed to provide some of these, and they haven't. Now, these, as one of my peers said, are all reserved matters. So how can the council make a decision on this, knowing that there are species there, and according to one of the illustrative master plans, I know that there are different versions of the illustrative master plans in some of the supporting reports. How can they make a decision that that is reasonable? One of them looks like it's on top of the badgers. Also, in the main planning statement, page 2, I only got this far, I haven't read the whole thing yet, I found a lot of issues. One of the things is it says there are no TPOs on the site. That's patently untrue. And their own arbitrary,
Yes.
thanks, their own trees report says this. Says there's a designated woodland consisting of 3 groups of trees that are TPO'd. One of those, their, again, indicative plan for where their emergency access will be, says that it is going to interfere with the root structure of one of those TPO trees. The other one, by the haze, is in the sight line for their proposed access. So there are a number of factors that are issues, but again, we're supposed to consider these as reserved matters and make a decision that, yeah, in principle, we're okay to approve this 335, and then we just end up with a fight later about what happens for these specific things. The other point I wanted to make is that the University of Sheffield did a survey a couple of years ago about natural mitigation standards and things that are put into planning permissions and then aren't implemented by developers. They actually concluded that less than 52% of mitigations that are put in planning applications and conditioned are then never implemented by the developers. So are we heading for, although they're saying they're going to generate diversity gain, are they really? Or are they just going to ruin another bit of countryside? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for all your contributions. I commend you all to keeping it so it's all varied and you're not been repeating yourself overly, so you've done a good job of representing the wider view. Thank you very much for that. If we go on to the agenda proper, item 2A, apologies for absence.
So, apologies for absence from Councillors Stephen Froggatt and Councillors Kerr Johnson.
Thank you. If you do want to go, but try and do it quietly while we carry on so we can at least get some of the football. Thank you.
I move we accept the apologies.
Thank you. Are you okay to accept the apologies?
All those in favour?
Everybody in favour of that? Well, Charlotte said. Yeah, no, we'll do that first. I would have dealt with the HMO and that one first. Anyway, but yeah, no. So I'll give the greatest number of people the chance to watch the football as possible. Okay, if you can keep the noise down if you're staying, please. 2B, to closure of councillors' interest in any matters relating to the Code of Conduct. Anybody got any interest on anything? Oh. You're not on.
Story of my life. I'm just looking at the wording, Chair. Hold on. Where's the minutes? There we go. Trying to remember them each time we come to a meeting. It's taxing on the grey matter. Yeah, I'd like to disclose that I'm a member of Shropshire Council's Northern Planning Committee, and any decisions, including decisions on HMOs and the large developments that we've seen tonight, will be taken at that meeting with the information I have at that time, and anything I say at this council meeting will have no effect on my decision at that point in time. I think I got that right.
Has anybody else going to declare any interest? No. Okay, I've already done mine at the beginning. Minutes, is everybody happy that the minutes of the last meeting are a true and accurate record? Thank you. Yeah, I'll take it as the same. Right, planning applications. In light of the balance of the interest in the room for the unsurprising interest for the big items, if we deal with the Mount Road application first, and then we'll do the HMO application, and then we'll go through the other ones which are more routine, unless there's anybody here for any of those and they do want to speak to them. I'm just double checking. Wendy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's been here and spoken so absolutely brilliantly tonight. I think that the content that people have provided has been really, really useful. I would also basically say I propose that we oppose this application as a town council. The reasons have been set out very clearly. I think because it is an outline planning permission and it was just talking about the access, just that in itself, for all the very reasonable reasons have been given, I think there's not much more I can actually say. The objections, the reasons, we just need to find a form of words for the town clerk.
Yeah, well, I think if we all chip in,
yeah,
then we may be able to distill everything down.
Yeah.
Jonathan and then Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I too would like to thank everyone who has come here tonight to make their points so eloquently. For the reasons above of the effect it will have on heritage, infrastructure, traffic, the environment, it's all been laid out. I too would propose that we object to it. So I would happily second your proposal, Councillor Owen.
Duncan.
Happy to support. I think we do need to be very specific to help the planning committee or whoever decides this application in their consideration. So to just to run through the issues and try to identify whether the National Planning Policy Framework supports it. First of all, we're dealing with the impact on a significant heritage asset. There are only 4 Grade 2 star listed properties in Oswestry. I know I own one of them, but this is one of the other 3. So it's a highly important heritage asset, and we've heard this is not even the developers admit. So the impact on the setting of a heritage asset is the first thing. Secondly, and this is National Planning Policy Framework, paragraphs 135 and 92, the site is not appropriate, it is not integrated. We look these days to have places developed where people can mix with their neighbours. If you moved into one of these houses, your neighbour could live on High Vower, just across the road. You'd have to walk a kilometre to go right the way round or drive a kilometre round to see them. So the fact that it's got one road in and one road out means that it is not well integrated into the town and therefore should be rejected on that layout grounds. We've heard about the space. The ecological survey actually identified badgers and potentially great-crested newts as well as polecats and hares. These are hugely protected. Hares in particular are protected species, and we should do all we can to safeguard their habitats. And it's been mentioned that the birds, and someone is telling me there's yellowhammers, which are quite a rare bird these days there, certainly buzzards, certainly kites, and it's an important part of the area. And then we come on to the flooding. Now, I'm sure the developers will say, oh, we've got resolved the flooding, but you've heard about the amount of digging out they're going to have to do to contain the flooding on site. And I think it is perfectly reasonable to say currently there are major problems of flooding. This extent of development can only exacerbate that. The idea that Muddy Lane itself is paved over is itself an ecological disaster in its own right, let alone anything else. It should be a significant loss of habitat and will not make the flooding any better because the water will flow down much quicker. Muddy Lane is actually a water retention facility, if you think about it. Whilst the water's there, it's not pushed down into town. You put a drain down and that will come right down into town. And then finally, and this is clause 117, and it may seem strange to people, but the government requires us to think about active transport, active travel and public transport first. And so we're building the proposal is to build an estate where the nearest bus stop is over 400 metres away. There's no chance of a bus ever going into this estate. It just won't be economically viable to drive a bus up there, round the estate and out. And that's the distance where even the government advice says that that's too far, let alone the fact you've got to walk back up a hill. It doesn't take topography into account. And ditto for cycling, you can't, I mean, if you cycle when they talk about tarmac in Muddy Lane, it's only the first part of Muddy Lane. So even if you cycled down there, the second part will still be, because it's not owned by a developer, still be a stream bed. You ain't going to cycle down there. So it's not well integrated in terms of cycling or walking or public transport. So it's exactly a sort of development, I'm afraid, that we've suffered from in the past and we should no longer have in the future. And so I'm asking for it to be refused, and I'd also ask for it to go to committee. I know that's a matter that the local member who's wending this occasion can ask for, but I think there's no harm in the town council also asking for this matter to be considered by the planning committee, because most decisions are made by officers under delegated authority, and we don't want that. We want the committee to hear it, and you'll have a chance as members of the public to go in front of the committee as you have here, but that would be a committee that makes a decision rather than as being consulted. I think it's fundamentally important that this matter goes to that planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. James.
So I think effectively, as Councillor Kerr alluded to, this has previously areas such as this have previously been developed in Eastern Oswestry. If you look at the likes of Smale Rise and Longville Drive, it is an isolated estate with one entrance road onto another entrance road that's also isolated with very few connections in. The benefits is it's right next to a school, it has a shop, it's got access, it's got things nearby to it, and this doesn't. So it seems insane almost that this has come forward at this level without any sort of infrastructure built in already, and saying, look, we understand that it's isolated, but there will be some mitigation here for that purpose. They've not even suggested that that's something they're willing to do. I think we do have to sort of be a bit realistic as well of there are benefits to any development currently, especially given the housing shortfalls and the fact that it would increase the number of affordable housing in Oswestry. I don't think that this site is good for affordable housing. It is quite far away from thing. You're saying that people of reduced sort of incomes aren't going to necessarily have the ability to have 2 cars to get to work, etc. You need to be closer to public transport. So you're already adding limitations that shouldn't be there when you're trying to plan those out at this stage, and they're not proposing that. I think under the realism of that, it's whether all of the negatives that we've had are of a significant weight beyond what the benefits are. I think, given past experience, what will happen either at committee or from an appeal is we will have to hear that this development is of a greater benefit than it is of like an adverse impact. I think that's untrue, but I just feel like that's the case. It's what the case is going to be, and despite everything we've said tonight, I think there needs to be major changes in planning sort of throughout the system to make sure that these issues are given more weight rather than just having numbers. And it should be based on local need, and the actual provision shouldn't just be like a number on a page of we can build 300 houses here. You need that housing, just not here.
one on the front.
Okay, right, yeah. I think everyone spoke so well tonight, and I agree with absolutely everything that's been said, and for James. One of the things that I notice when you get something like this is that why can't they start with, well, 330 houses, but we are going to put a school, we are going to support a new doctor's surgery or something. There is never any mention of infrastructure, and I don't see how we can take anything else in the town without infrastructure. And just mine is an observation. I live on Hampton Road. I have a Labrador. Labradors love water. For 5 months, 5 whole months, from November to 5, beginning of April, I walked up Muddy Lane about 2 to 3 times a week. It was up to the top of my wellies most of the time. He loved it, and it was okay. But the mud... But on top of that, it is the environmental thing. You know, we see every day, I see something new and lovely up that lane. And if you think you can, I mean, I know nothing about building or anything, but it just doesn't seem to me that you can suddenly say, oh, well, we'll just tarmac over it. No, 5 months of water coming down like that, you can't just tarmac over. That's all.
Thank you. I'll come to you again in a minute. No, well, what Duncan said is right in terms of the way it connects to the rest of the town. Because if just in terms of the vehicle movements, rather than having it all go out one entrance, it would be better, for argument's sake, if it went out in 2 places or 3 places and was better connected to the rest of town. But historically, a lot of the town is not joined up like that, and that happens a lot in Shropshire. It's been sequentially added by 2030 at a time, and it's not been done in a planned way. It's all been done in a random way that's been developer-led. And then that causes all sorts of problems around drainage and the way that they don't look wide enough beyond the site to work out where the actual impact's going to be a pressure point. They're a bit better at that on highways. But even so, if you put the infrastructure in that it would need to save the journeys into town, like school or places, then you're going to get reciprocal traffic coming in to access those services from elsewhere, so you're not necessarily solving a problem. The principal argument is it's on the wrong side of town because it's geographically wrong. It's going to create more burden on all the choke points, on all the services and all the infrastructure. The impact on the setting of the listed building is material consideration, and that counts for the view out as well as the view in. The same goes, you've got the conservation area on the other side of the mount. It's all relevant for the views in and out of the conservation area, the setting of the town, that just the way that there's going to have to be a lot of landscaping to do these balancing ponds to retard the runoff. But it's exactly the same when it comes to foul drainage. Severn Trent is generally over capacity all over the place. And if you overburden any sewerage works, they just charge the surplus into the stormwater somewhere else, and then that causes another complicated problem. So they've got to do these sorts of large sites in a better way. And for me, I would prefer it if, when we're objecting, we specifically say that it should be a full application where all the things are considered on the merit in the general balance, rather than cherry picking just the principle and the access and 1 or 2 other things and keeping everything else as reserve matters. Because once you've accepted the principle of 335 houses, that's a given, and then all you can do is argue about the way it's done. But materially, the impacts of poor drainage or whatever, you may not be able to mitigate that enough. So you should be, in my view, this particular one, because of the complexity, should be a full application, not an outline application. But that's just my personal opinion. But I think that there's enough in all, what everybody said to crystallise that, or do you want to actually sharpen up for actual decision, is my question, because I know they've moved it but not really said specifically.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously enough to be captured. I just want to pick up that full application, given that you're likely to, that I think that the members to object. So I just wanted to see where that fits in the narrative. That's
Well, if we should be objecting to it,
yeah.
full stop. I'm not qualifying that in any way at all.
Okay.
But one of the reasons for objecting to it is because of the complexity of the whole scheme.
Yeah,
You need to judge the merits of the whole scheme, not sequentially a bit at a time.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, Doug.
Is it possible to say that we haven't got all the information that we would needed to be positive about it because some of the ecological surveys and some of the other information is missing? If it was a full application, it would be there. It's only an outline application. It's not, but we have to object because we haven't got that there. Chair.
Mark.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've heard the public, obviously. I've heard what people are saying. I agree. There's no problem with that. I do think that we ought to also crystallise it on to the things that currently it's asking us to, because if it's outlined, it's asking about things like access. And I think we've heard and said that the access onto Mount Road is not really suitable. It's there's a previous planning application which was refused because of the access and because of traffic onto that road. I think it's the same applicant, isn't it? They were actually putting up barns up for.
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter, but it has been refused previously on the issues of the road. There's the volume and speed of traffic on that road, which means that you are looking to get the speed reduced if it was to go ahead, and also some form of vehicle VS to actually monitor the speed. So all these things go in as part of what is required should that thing go ahead. Also, I think as nobody mentioned, or they may have mentioned, the little bit further down, that terrible junction with Oakhurst Road and Oak Street, and it's a veritable, it's right by the fire station, is it? Yeah, it's a horrible junction, and if that will suffer also from the increased volume of traffic. So if you're going to object, stick that in as well, because it'll have to be addressed presumably. And also at the outline stage, it's a stage that we should be looking for contributions to schools, to doctors, to make sure that should it get forced, we at least get something out of it so to benefit those residents and the ones surrounding them. So you put the fact that you require extra school places, the extra doctors' places and healthcare places at the same time to try and tease that out should it go the way we don't want it to go.
It's a fair comment to say that you put all your objections in and then you specifically say if you're minded to approve it, you've got to do X, Y and Z, because then you've covered both things, because we only get one shout at objecting unless it's redesigned and comes back and so on. The direction of travel with the government is even reserved matters will be done under officer delegation. That might go to committee. But just to clarify what Duncan said before, Wendy can ask for it to be called in, and our decision has a bearing on that, but that goes to an agenda setting pre-screening meeting, and that meeting decides whether it goes to committee or not. So it's not a direct call in, it's a bit of a misnomer in terms of language, so I just don't want to confuse anybody listening or in the room. That's all. Yeah. Is everybody in favour of that recommendation?
Just to clarify the actual proposal. I think I know what it is, but just to make sure.
Is everybody who's in favour of refusing the application? Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. If anybody else wants to go now and get some fresh air, never mind try and get some football, then be my guest. It's not a problem. Thank you. And again, thanks for coming. Sorry, timed out. Come on. Right, let's carry on because we all want to get away. Well, you can do that. I'm going. If we do Hope Church, then next. Did you want to speak to Hope Church? Oh, right, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Do you want to go first, Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this application has generated quite a lot of activity online. I've had 26 emails, actually 27. I've had one more tonight before I came to the meeting. I haven't been able to reply to that because I was coming here. But I've had 26 emails, definitely, which I've replied to. They've all been along the same vein. It's quite understandable. There are 35 comments on the planning portal tonight. And all 35 were objections. So again, it's giving you a feeling of what kind of public feeling there is for this application. Now, I have already called this in, so it's already gone to the, it will be going to the agenda setting, hopefully, and with if the town councils are so minded, that will back up what I've done as well. I have said that this is an overdevelopment in a traditional family house area. There's no provision for any parking. Originally, in a previous rendition of this application, there was. But the pre-application noted that even the parking that was put into place in the original application, it was insufficient. So the new application cut it out altogether. Now, that means that you've got a 10-unit HMO and 4 flats, which, according to the developers, will be occupied by people who don't have cars. And that's what they've said in their brief. They are not likely to have cars to drive, even though they describe the aim as towards professional people and key workers, which means that those kind of people do have to have cars. And so where are these people going to park? It's going to be out on street, outside the front, in an area which is already quite difficult to be parking on. So no provision for parking. There's problems potentially with privacy of the neighbours, because this particular application looks out over left and right for the neighbours, and I think the pre-app was talking about providing frosted glazing to try and mitigate some of that, but didn't take into account the areas of the common areas where people would go into, which was overlooking the neighbours. So you can't have frosted glass all the way around the outside in order to try and secure privacy. So I would like to propose that we object to this application, and with the points I've actually just said, whether it be privacy and the local amenity, whether it be parking, or whether it be overdevelopment in a family house area. I will actually also put in, if you like, that the negative side is that there's been an application on this site for HMOs in the past, about 3 or 4 years ago. It was for 22 units for veterans, and that was passed unanimously and had complete approval in the estate, because it was almost like it was an HMO which had veterans going in, and it would have been monitored by wardens and so on, and people thought it was a good idea. That was approved, but then not used. And this is coming back now with another HMO application, but not with veterans. Now, my concern is that potentially this is a precedent. And if it goes to appeal, we subject, if the Northern Planning Committee refuses, if it goes to appeal, one of the inspector's appeal items would probably be, oh, it's already had an HMO planning application in the past. So that is a concern for me, even though that application was completely different in its kind of feel. So that's the first thing. Secondly, in the area, there has been an HMO application in a couple of years ago in Hawthorne Grove, 2 doors down from where I was born. And that was refused because of overdevelopment and parking, amongst others. Admittedly, that is slightly more compact because it's part of a terrace, but there is a precedent for these things to be refused, and fairly locally to where this application is as well. So I'll put those 2 things in extra, but overall I would propose that we actually do object to this application for the items that I've actually said.
Can I just ask a question, then I'll bring Jonathan in, then it'll be Duncan and then James. A question of you, yes. On the previous application, was it exactly the same physical thing? It was just 22 units on the subdivision?
It was the
Or
same
was it
physical...
partial demolition or...
It was the same physical site, but it had a different structure.
So it was a new build rather than reusing?
It was it was partly reusing. I think it may have had a part build as well. It's on the planning portal still.
Oh yeah, no, just because you've looked at it. So
yeah,
I just thought I'd pick your brains.
No.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. They're only what some might consider minor points. I think they're serious ones. If we are adding reasons to our objection, can I also add 2 pertinent points? Firstly, according to the plans and the pictures, I can't figure out where the facilities for recycling and refuse are going to be, but also accessibility for people, say, in wheelchairs. It was marketed at professionals, professionals for want of a word. Some professionals have disabilities, some have just as much a right to recycling facilities as anybody else. I might have skimmed over them, apologies if I have, but if they're not on here, can we add them to the objection as well, as it is an expectation of any modern housing for such facilities?
Is that a clarification? Yeah, you've got it.
I do believe there is the waste as you look at it in the front, it's on the right-hand side as it goes down the side. It is on the planning portal map for waste, and on the left-hand side there's a whole pile of cycle racks.
I'll open it on here, Jonathan, while we take Duncan and then James. Duncan.
I am concerned, as you are, about car parking in particular in this area and the over-intensification. The concern has to be, though, that, as I understand it, the application for 22 units of what is multiple occupied accommodation was granted, and it isn't specific to veterans. Once it's a use class, and there isn't a separate use class for veterans and a separate use class for other people. So it has got permission for 22 units of multiple occupied accommodation. But I think that was decided with support. So I think there is an issue there that was a planning permission, as I understand it, which is conditioned to having a unit that is supported, where you would look for people who are less likely to have cars because they need that sort of support. So I'm just supporting, the concept that I think we need to object on the grounds of car parking. It's ridiculous to have that extensive facility without any car parking provision and over-intensification. But we also need to be honest with local residents that it's going to be difficult to defend some applications, because as it sits there, it's got 22 units of multiple occupied accommodation. This application only has 10 units of multiple occupied accommodation and 4 flats, and hopefully we would move in the future to having more flats than multiple occupied accommodation.
Yeah, because that's definitely the fallback position that they can revert to. So they will play that against whatever the committee try and do. James.
I think Duncan has just covered a lot of what I was sort of going to raise. I think around the co-living supportive accommodation, that's covering a need in the county of housing need. There is a lot of market rented properties in the town. It's not affordable, but there are market rent properties. The need that we have in that area and across Oswestry is for 1 and 2 beds of social housing, not affordable under the definition that's been created, not market rent. We need social affordable housing, and this doesn't cater to the housing need of that area. It's a matter of what we should be asking for is either ensuring that it is a local letting and making sure that if it did go social or affordable, that it was catering for people locally rather than trying to cater for single professionals coming in from outside to work here. It should cater for the need of the people already here needing a 1-bedroom accommodation. But also, I think just a point in general of the need currently, especially in that area and across Oswestry, is for social housing, not affordable. Like, it's not necessarily affordable. It's up to 80% of the current market value. That's not affordable still for most people. And the real need is for social rent, which can be about 50% of market rent. That's clear. There's a clear definition between those two descriptors of it. And I know that it's not necessarily something that you can object on in planning. That it was just, I think it's the context that I want to add. But what I'd ask for is the consideration of what could be better laid out on that site, rather than just trying to fit 10 houses into that area.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you come back up. I've already called for it.
With James, actually, just to ask one question. I thought we couldn't specify in any way at all who went into them, because you were saying about local people just then. So if we could have social housing, which is what I actually...
The use you can do, you can't talk about people.
Okay, I see.
As occupants.
And that's exactly to where I want to kind of is that difference between social housing and affordable housing. And I think I wish we could do more 1 and 2 bedroomed social housing, because people talk about these HMOs and professionals and things, but actually what we want is stability for people. And I don't think, somewhere that doesn't have privacy, because if you've got to share your cooking, share this, I just think we need proper, and just they can be small, but we need proper accommodation in the town and proper affordable, proper social accommodation that actually gives people and families stability.
Duncan.
I don't want any members of the public to be misled, so I did just check back over the original application. They withdrew the reference to veterans. I did remember something about it. They said that might prejudice their ability to get funding for the scheme. So there is no restriction on the current planning permission they have got which specifies any particular client group. But they did describe it as, I think, co-living or some sort of like nature. And equally, there is no, and Dave will know this more than me, no definition of social housing under the planning regime. There is a definition of affordable housing, and you can say we are providing affordable housing, has to be 20% below, etc., etc., etc. But you cannot specify we are providing social housing. It doesn't exist. I mean, because there's no clarification as to what it is, or what rent you would charge for it even.
I mean, for my money, when you look at the site, it's already overburdened as a site by what's the current use, and for my money, it would be better to just rip as a minimum, rip the front off, so you've got the parking area. But really, you would take the whole thing down and build a better purpose-built, more modest footprint that actually use the site better, because you're going to create amenity space and other things, but because they have got this fallback position, that'll be a very difficult argument to make.
Discussion. The original application was a 2-storey extension, so they were taking the atrium down and they were extending the building to get that number of units in. I don't think this application has any extension, it's just working within the building, so they would have to go back to the original application with an extended, more expensive building to enact that.
But as I say, I would go further and I'd take it off to create the parking and then take the back down, and then you've got amenity space. But then you'd have to have a much better designed building from scratch to keep it economic. But that's just my personal. it's not a thing that you can really do necessarily. In the context, they've already got permission to do what they've got. Wendy. Everybody in favour of that? Thank you very much.
So just for the narrative, I'm just going to, some of that's difficult to capture objections, but to say that this is about overdevelopment, over-intensification of a property in a residential setting. There's no parking provision, lots of privacy overlooking.
No amenity space.
No amenity space.
Jonathan's accessibility points. Mark?
Just a correction, Chair. There is a certain amount of amenity space in that middle area, but it wouldn't necessarily be enough.
Your idea
But
of
saying that there
amenity is
isn't any is
different to
not quite right.
Insufficient amenity space, lack of accessibility to those in wheelchairs. I'm going to stay away from recognising the code planning application here because that's I'm just saying that we'd encourage the planners to work with developers to bring forward a development which addresses local need, which isn't exclusively social housing, if you want to add that bit.
Yeah, I'd put it in. Well, there's a definite need for a use that isn't necessarily what this is delivering.
So encourage planners to work with developers to bring forward a more acceptable sites.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we did, yes. Tennis elbow. Okay, so if you go back to the original running order and we do the Boar's Head next. Who wants to? Anybody else got any? James? Yeah.
I've not been to the back of the Boar's Head. Some people might be surprised of. Is there currently a screen in the? Is there currently a screen in the location that they are? Yeah, it was just to make sure that they're not adding potentially something which could then cause noise to the surrounding area. Yeah, I couldn't see it on.
Ledge is a bit on.
Yeah, it was just making sure that given that it's sort of located one next to our park, but also there are accommodation down there, we don't want to be approving an additional massive stage and screen, but I'm perfectly happy to make no comment.
Okay. Well, are we happy with it, or do we just want to do no comment? Okay. Okay. Well, we're just not commenting. The clerk won't even send anything in. It would just be blank, won't it? What's the point of sending a piece of paper or an email saying nothing to say?
I mean, if we support, it's a comment, isn't it?
Well, technically, yes. There is a reputation we need, standards we need to uphold. Yeah. Okay. Let me just make sure because I've changed the order on my tabs now. Yeah, noted. It's going to the trouble of creating these things, you may as well let it put them on the screen. I didn't have any objection to it. No objection. You know what I think about that comment. Mark?
Strictly speaking, the planners don't like no comments because they like to know how we think and they prefer an actual positive or negative thing going in. Yeah. In which case, if along those lines, it seems perfectly acceptable, and you either say that
Well,
we're supporting it or...
we can only vote on what we've seen.
Yes.
We can't vote on evidence that's going to be going to the
No,
principal
no,
committee.
but it seems perfectly okay. And do we just say that, do we give a positive...
Jonathan.
Is the traditional term of no observation classed as a comment? Because we could submit that.
I could go, that would be a comment, but it doesn't tell them anything, does it?
I think it's unreasonable for Shropshire Council to expect us to investigate every application, speak to all the neighbours. If we don't, we might come to a different opinion, but that's not our role. Our role is just say we put it on the agenda, we've heard from members of the public, we've heard nothing against it, we've heard nothing for it either, we haven't got a comment. And it's not our role to go around trying to find comments on planning applications.
No, but they want our opinion.
Yeah, they might want it.
Qualified opinion.
Yeah, if we've got...
If you haven't got one, that's fine. I'm just saying, but anyway. It's been proposed that we do no comment.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you.
So there's Billy Cottage, was this no comment on this one as well?
Can't say the issue. Variation. Is that good enough for comment? Can't say the issue.
I didn't have anything.
Right, bang that gavel.
Just because Jonathan wants me to. I'm not really bothered. I almost didn't have the energy to lift it. It's all right, yeah. Well, so the time constraint helps. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's good.
The minutes will agree that you extended.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We didn't mention it, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to go with flow and...
Aaron?
Oh, I think they...
Is that box over there still for disposing of papers? Yeah. Thank you.
Do you want to put that in there as well?
Thank you, yes.
Right. Oh, just got full council tomorrow now.